The best and biggest longhorns could be moved in one huge herd along a trail to the closest town with a railroad station. Called a railhead, the cattle were then brought to market by train. Some trails were long, about 1,000 miles, and cowboys could only drive the herd for about 10 to 15 miles a day. They didn't want to push the cattle too hard or they'd lose weight, and they also took time to stop and let the animals graze along the way. Cattle drives could take months, and only the toughest cowboys went on them. And here's a map to show you. A herd of several thousand cattle might stretch a mile along the trail to be tended by as many as 15 cowboys. Each cowboy had his own task. The chuck wagon rode along ahead of the herd, carrying food, utensils, and bedding. Cowboys called the food chuck, and that's where the name chuck wagon came from. It was driven by a cook called the cookie. Next came the wrangler. He was in charge of the spare horses, numbering as many as 100. The group of horses was called a remuda, a Spanish word. The trail cowboys would switch to fresh horses 3 or 4 times a day. What's up, guys? You want to hear the book now? Now you're interested? All right, hold on. The trail boss was called the foreman. He rode at the end of the herd. The cowboy had a good knowledge of the trail and was able to communicate. Guys, hi. Okay, all right, Dolly, all right, okay, thank you. Yes. These are the best students we have in town, right here. He was able to communicate with Native Americans they might meet along the way. He was also an excellent tracker. As the cattle in front of the herd began to move along, the other cattle would follow. The front of the herd was called the point position. Most experienced cowboys rode as point riders. They guided the steer, keeping the pace and moving them along in the right direction. Cowboys called swing riders moved the herd forward and made sure the cattle didn't spread out too far. The flank riders kept the cattle within the herd, preventing strays. The back of the herd was called the drag position, and the drag cowboys had the worst job of all. They rode through thick clouds of dust, urging slowpokes along and keeping an eye out for rustlers. Some days, the cowboys were in the saddle for 16 hours. Because the cookie traveled ahead with the chuck wagon, he was able to have the food ready for them when the trail team arrived. A meal was usually pork and beans, sourdough, bread, and coffee. "Come and get it," he would call. Cowboys often joked with the cookie when they ate their meals. Many nights, the cowboys would sit around the campfire telling stories and singing cowboy songs, like Home on the Range. It was time to relax and look at the sky filled with stars. Some cowhands used their saddles as pillows and when they settled down in their bedrolls to sleep. Day after day, cattle moved along the dusty trail, and what cowboys feared most was a stampede. Cattle were easily spooked. Thunder and lightning and strange noises could send the herd in a panic. It was the cowboys' job to get them back under control, and many cowboys were injured or killed during this difficult task. Along the hard journey, the cowboys and cattle at last would make their way into town. The cowboys moved the cattle into pens near railroad tracks, where they would be able to travel easily to points east. The rancher was paid for the steer, and the cowboys were paid for their work. It was time to have fun. The first thing a cowboy wanted to do was to soak in a hot tub. What a treat to get a haircut and a shave and buy new clothes. They would sing and dance and have fun in town, and the sheriff stayed nearby so that law and order prevailed.